10 webcasts every day at 3 o'clock celebrating civil rights. This is Black History Month. We want to thank Comcast of the Twin Cities, presenting this series of Conversations with Al McFarlane Facebook Live. My guest today is a friend, a hero, a person who's knowledgeable about the civil rights movement, about the history of our country, a person who served with distinction. He was a Buffalo Soldier. He is a hero. 3 times decorated with the Bronze Star, part of the Allied invasion of Italy to help fight against fascist tyranny and to win the war for our modern society, win the war for the West. Ray Robinson is a native of Texas, and he's 99 years old. When I talked to Ray a few days ago, he said, "Al, I'm 99 and fine." Ray, brother, you're 99 and fine. First of all, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your service to our people. And I know of no one better to ask to reflect on what civil rights mean for our people, because you were there at a time when our rights were completely and totally deprived, denied. Not that things have changed all that much, but things are different. So Ray, welcome, first of all. When you reflect, what do you think about first, being a young person growing up in the South?
You know, Al, when I do my reflection, growing up in the South, Texas, one of the slave states, I always think about how far we have come now when I reflect. We have a ways to go, but we have come a ways, because I remember the dark past. I remember that too well. And living in the slave state like I did, I lived it. And I saw the brutality of racial segregation. So we've come a ways, Al. And at 99 years, I think maybe we'll beat this thing called racial inequality. We have wonderful leaders fighting for that now, and I feel confident that we'll get there. And with people like yourself, Al, who have devoted your life to helping people, to helping our race, then I'll have to give you a big A+. Thank you very much, Al.
Ray, thank you so much. I mentioned that you are a decorated hero. You were trained by the Buffalo Soldiers, and the division that you were part of was called Buffalo Soldiers. Talk about that. In fact, let me show the medals. This is a collection of Ray Robinson's medals, among them 3 Bronze Stars. What is the Bronze Star, and what is it for?
The Bronze Stars is for individual battles. I got 3 of these because I fought in 3 brutal battles in Italy. The first one was the liberation of Rome, the Rome-Arno River crossing. The second one was the Po Valley, that's Italy's breadbasket. The third was the Northern Apennines. The Northern Apennines is that mountain range that runs from Italy into Switzerland. So those were that 3.
And what role did you play? What was your assignment? What was your job? And how did you win these awards?
My assignment was varied. First, I was with the big 155 millimeter howitzers. They thought I was sharp enough to put me up front with the FOs, forward observers, which means you went as far forward as you could, as close to the German lines as you could get, and you, with a walkie-talkie, and you sent that information back to the big guns.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Po Valley, Rome-Arno crossing, and the Northern Apennines, that's how I won these medals.
And your job was to put yourself at risk to direct fire from the Allied side to the adversary.
So glad you mentioned that, Al, because I might have skipped that. Put yourself in direct trouble, direct
Line of fire.
direct fire to the German lines. And the best friend I ever had from my same high school was chopped down because, like me, he was an FO, a forward observer too. Herman Rochelle, I think about him often, like I do so many other guys who paid the price. But that's part of that story, only part of that story, because the 92nd Division fought like tigers. I'm glad to have been a part of that group of men.
The background, Ray Robinson, about the 92nd is that you were operating in an environment that tried to question the capacity of black soldiers. Yeah. Were you brave enough? Were you strong enough? Were you smart enough? Could you defend a line, or could you lead an attack? And you all laid all of that to rest.
And I remember all of that, Al. I remember that. Can they fight? Will they fight? Can they do the job? We showed them big time. We did the job. And I'm proud that we did, Al, because we didn't do it just for ourselves. We did it for our people, for all black people.
Mm-hmm. And when you returned home, and this happened, I think, after World War I as well, when black soldiers returned, they were greeted like heroes they were in black communities. Yes. All over this country. And our people were proud to see fighting men and women standing up for the principles of democracy and for the promise of freedom, even though that promise was not extended to us.
That's right. That's absolutely right, Al. I remember some incidents vividly, where I went to step on a bus, and I was held back by a white man telling me the bus. So yes, slavery was not dead. Bigotry lives in some forms today. We haven't got there yet, but we're battling. We're still battling, and I'm glad of that.
Ray, when I think about you and the other men and women who served our country, the veterans who served with valor and distinction, some in combat, some in not, just service. What I know is that when you returned to community, you brought a sense of urgency and a sense of confidence, a sense of resolve that made it abundantly clear that freedom was at hand.
Yes.
And that we would not stop. And no matter how many obstacles they placed in front of us, we were equal to the task, superior to the task, and that freedom was at hand, and freedom was imminent and inevitable. And I think that's the spirit that men and women like you walked around in and exuded to encourage all of us. What do you think about that?
Very well put, Al. Nobody could better than that. That's absolutely right. I knew in my community that what I was doing should bring a sense of urgency to the other people, other black people, to do something along those lines, that you weren't whipped. You're not whipped. You know, you got fighting instinct in you, and use that instinct. And so today, as an old man in the twilight of his years, I feel very good about the things that we accomplished early on. The young blacks who were with me, who paid the supreme price. What's happening is for them too, and they should not be forgotten. I appreciate you asking that, Al.
And so, Ray, at 99, you've seen a century of change. I ask my guests sometimes to think back to when they were 4 or 5 years old, to go to their earliest childhood memories, and to give a report, if you could visit back, on what that 4-year-old, that 5-year-old had envisioned, had hoped, and had dreamed of. So I ask you that question, Ray Robinson. Go back to your 4, 5, 6-year-old Ray Robinson. What was he thinking, and what was he desiring? What do you think?
Great question, because I frequently reflect back how old was I when I became aware of what was around me. I must have been 5 years old, Al, because I can remember things that happened when I was 5. My father worked in an oil refinery, and I remember him going to work every day, and a lot of times he would forget his gloves. The refinery was close by. And it was so long ago until they didn't use motorized vehicles. They had mule teams. And my mother would say, "Oh, you forgot your gloves." And he would come back. I was 5 years old then, I can remember that. And I wasn't aware of racial segregation at that time. When you're 5 years old, you don't think that in those terms. Nothing like that has hit you. But after you grow and get into the world and you get out and you can see the mean looks, you can see what racial segregation is when they tell you to get back and stuff like this. Then you begin to realize how brutal and how ugly racial segregation is. And of course, my father told me about the lynchings and the hangings in Alabama when he was a young man. He left there. It was so brutal, he left when he was 17. And he told me that lynching that used to be a happening. White families would take their kids out to the big trees where they were hanging, lynching black men, so they could see that, and you are more than he is. The birth of a nation.
The film, yeah.
White supremacy. Still, they use that term today. Whites are supreme. Thank God we know better than that. And we got black people fighting against that.
And we've always fought.
Yes.
And sometimes, the mainstream media would make it appear that we were okay
Yes.
with subjugation, okay with subservience, okay with even slavery. They would try to say things like, "Oh, you were taken care of,
Yes.
and you were happy."
Yes.
Happy darkies, right?
Yeah, that's what.
But it was brainwashing, attempting to brainwash us, but also to brainwash white people away from the responsibility of being the decent human beings that they could have been and that they should be.
Beautifully put, Al.
But now we have the power through internet and
Yes.
through television and newspapers to tell the story, to tell the truth. And Ray, I thank you for telling the truth right now.
And men like yourself, Al, we owe you a great, great debt of gratitude. And I hope the rest of our community, the black community and the white community, can see the job that you are doing. I don't want that overlooked. We all played our part. I played my part. You played your part big time. So as I live out my life, live out my days, like I tell my grandsons and my 2 great grandkids, nobody lives forever. We would like to, but no one lives forever. So make your mark, pay the price, make our people better, make people understand who we are. And I'm really grateful to you, Al.
Well, I'm grateful to you. You were talking before the webcast, Ray Robinson, about you knew grandparents who had been enslaved. And so slavery is not that far. And let me tell you this. On the wall, we're looking at a picture of my great-grandmother. Lizzie Harrison was born the property of other human beings. That's how close this. This woman I knew.
Yes,
She held me
yes.
and talked to me, and so I'm that close.
It wasn't that long
It's
ago.
not that long ago.
That's right.
And so look, from that, you were talking about your sons and grandsons who are doing marvelous work in industry and in business, and in all fields of
Yes.
education. That's a great story.
Yes, and on top of that, Al, my grandparents, who passed before I could meet them, in the slave state of Alabama, one of the most brutal of all slave states, they didn't get their freedom until Lincoln did that Emancipation Proclamation. That shows you how compact this slavery is today. It wasn't that long ago. And I was just looking yesterday, and I mentioned that to you before the Comcast, before the talk. 1619,
Yep.
400 years ago.
2019 today,
Yeah,
400 years.
2019.
Yeah.
And they brought our people against their will from our continent, the African continent. And, you know, today they talk about immigrants. We don't want you here. We didn't want to come here, but they brought us. They were glad to bring us here, chased us down and brought us here. And I just wonder sometimes when I'm reflecting, we picked the cotton, we made them filthy rich with the tobacco, the sugar cane fields. We did that work. So when people mention today and say, when our people say, we built this country, we have built this country, they're telling the truth. They're telling the truth. We have built this country, so I don't want people saying, go back to where you came from. You came from here.
Right
We're
here.
here.
We made this, we built it.
We made this.
Ray Robinson, I want to thank you so much. I want to leave with, again, one more word of praise about your service to the country. I tell people in my family and others, and young people, young men and women, that we should consider the value of service in general, but honorable service in the military service is a good thing.
A good thing.
And it's a way to give yourself a leg up, a foot up, an opportunity, a toehold into economic prosperity and security, because you can use that to go to college, to buy a house, and to plant yourself into the middle class solidly and beyond.
It did for me, Al.
It did for you, and it did for me as well.
Yes.
It did for me as a veteran. So I think that a message I want to always come out of your and my conversation is to encourage our people to look at the value, the benefit of service for the sake of service, but also the practical side, that there are personal wealth building, education building benefits that can be derived from being a member of the U.S. Armed Services.
Absolutely. You're so right about that, Al. It'll give young people a different view on life, a better view on life.
And I want to close with a word of praise as well. Ray Robinson is a hero, is a collection of some of the medals he earned in combat in World War II with the Allied invasion of Italy. 3 major battles, all of which rendered decorations for bravery for the work he did on behalf of our country. Ray, I want to thank you for your service and thank you for being here and praise you. 99 and fine. Ray, you look good. Good to see you, brother.
I thank you, Al. I thank you very much.
Well, I'm Al McFarlane. This is the first of a series of 10 special webcasts from the Marcus Garvey House from Insight News in North Minneapolis. Today, my guest was Ray Robinson. He is a hero. He's a civil rights hero, a human rights hero, a father, a grandfather, a person that has just continually provided inspiration, leadership, and service. He is a witness to what has happened and also has a testimony about what can happen, what great good lies ahead for all of us. Tomorrow, my interview is with one of the greatest preachers around today, Reverend Jerry McAfee. He's the pastor of New Salem Missionary Baptist Church and former president of the Minnesota State Baptist Convention on Friday at 3 o'clock. My colleague, my friend, another of my heroes, Alfred Babington Johnson, visionary, founder, and leader of the Stair Step Initiative and the Stair Step Foundation. So we're continuing this series for 10 programs today through Tuesday, February 26th. It's Black History Month, and we are reflecting on civil and human rights. To experience interviews with civil rights leaders from Minnesota and across our country, visit Comcast's Voices of the Civil Rights Movement platform. It's available for free at civilrightsvoices.com. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Share this and join us again tomorrow. I'm Al McFarlane.